The glass shattered just after midnight. I opened my eyes and listened. For a moment, the house was silent. Then I heard Melissa's voice from the kitchen below. "You promised this was temporary, Daniel. I need my house back." I sat up slowly. Henry was asleep beside me, one hand resting over the blanket. His knee surgery had gone well, but he still woke easily when the pain returned. I did not want to disturb him. I slipped on my robe and stepped into the hallway. A thin line of light stretched across the floor from the staircase. I had intended to ask whether anyone was hurt. Instead, I stopped near the top step. Daniel answered quietly. "I know. My office is still packed in the garage. The kids do their homework at the kitchen counter. Your mother has filled every shelf in the guest bathroom." Melissa did not sound cruel. She sounded tired. That made the words harder to dismiss. Daniel lowered his voice. "Give me until the end of the month." I placed one hand against the wall. 4 months earlier, Daniel had asked Henry and me to stay with them. We had sold our house sooner than expected, and Henry needed surgery before we could choose our next home. "Take your time," Daniel had said. "Stay as long as you need." Melissa had prepared the guest room herself. She bought fresh towels. She cleared space in the hall closet. She even placed a chair in the shower so Henry would feel safe. I believed we were welcome. Maybe we had been. But small things had changed. Our coats were moved into plastic bins in the garage. A measuring tape appeared across the guest room wall. A brochure for a senior living community was left beside my coffee cup. Melissa had told Lily that the guest room would soon become Mommy's office again. I had noticed every sign. I simply chose not to name them. Downstairs, Melissa sighed. "I care about your parents. You know that." "I know. But I cannot keep waiting for someone else to make a plan for my home." Daniel said nothing. That silence told me more than an argument would have. He understood her. He had already agreed. He just had not found the courage to tell us. I stepped backward before either of them could see me. I returned to the bedroom and closed the door without making a sound. Henry was still sleeping. In 3 weeks, we would celebrate 40 years of marriage. I sat on the edge of the bed and watched him breathe. 40 years earlier, we began in a 1-bedroom apartment above a hardware store. The pipes rattled whenever the upstairs tenant took a shower. The kitchen window would not close during winter. Our first table was a wooden crate covered with a white cloth from my mother. We owned very little. But no one had ever needed to remind us that the place belonged to us. I lay awake until morning. At 6:30, Henry opened his eyes. "You did not sleep," he said. After 4 decades, he could tell by the way I folded my hands. I told him what I had heard. I did not soften Melissa's words. I did not make Daniel sound worse than he was. When I finished, Henry looked toward the window for a long time. "Do you think we have stayed too long?" he asked. "I think Daniel should have spoken to us." "Yes. And I think Melissa should not have needed to ask him more than once." Henry nodded slowly. Neither of us was angry with her. She had a right to want her home back. What hurt was knowing our son had given her an ending date while letting us believe there was no hurry. "What do you want to do?" Henry asked. I looked around the guest room. Our family photographs stood on the dresser because Melissa did not want more holes in the walls. 4 boxes were stacked near the closet. Most of our life was already packed. "I want a front door of our own again," I said. Henry reached for my hand. "We should not make a decision because we are hurt. We won't. We need to know what we can afford." "I know. And we should take our time." "We will." He studied my face. Then he smiled slightly. "But we can start looking." That morning, we ate breakfast with Daniel and Melissa. Melissa apologized for breaking one of her favorite glasses. Daniel spoke about traffic and the weather. Neither of them mentioned the conversation. Neither did we. At 10:15, Henry and I left the house. We told them we had errands to run. Our first stop was a small real estate office near downtown. The agent, Anna, asked what kind of home we wanted. Something manageable, she suggested. Henry looked at me. I thought about quiet rooms prepared for older people who were expected to need less. Less space. Less work. Less life. No, I said. Something with a little history. Henry added, and room for flowers. Anna smiled. By noon, we had scheduled 3 home viewings. As we walked back to the car, Henry opened the passenger door for me, just as he had on our first date. We were younger the last time we did this, I said. We were poorer, too. And somehow less afraid. He looked at me across the roof of the car. Then let us try being young again. I laughed. For the first time since the glass shattered, I did not feel rejected. I felt as if a door had quietly opened. We believed we were only searching for somewhere else to live. We had no idea that one old house on Maple Street had been waiting for a Whitmore to come home. The first house had everything we were supposed to want. 1 floor. 2 bedrooms. A small patio. No stairs. No yard to maintain. The real estate agent, Anna, called it practical. Henry stood in the living room and looked through the window at a strip of decorative gravel. No garden, he said. You have complained about yard work for 40 years, I reminded him. I complained about mowing. That is yard work. Flowers are different. Anna smiled politely. The house was clean and bright. The kitchen appliances were new. The bathroom had safety rails beside the shower. There was nothing wrong with it. That was the problem. It felt like a place designed for people who were expected to need less. Less space. Less work. Less life. I tried to imagine our grandchildren visiting. There was nowhere for Noah to spread out his wooden train tracks. Nowhere for Lily to sit beside me while I baked. No porch. No tree. No room that made me wonder what memories might be waiting inside it. When we returned to the car, Anna handed me the listing. You could move in next week, she said. I folded the paper and placed it in my bag. We are not looking for somewhere to wait, I said. We are looking for somewhere to live. Henry reached across the console and squeezed my hand. The second house was larger. It also cost more than we could comfortably afford. The third had a beautiful yard, but the basement smelled damp and the traffic from the highway never stopped. By late afternoon, Henry's knee was aching. My notebook was filled with prices, taxes, insurance estimates, and repair costs. Nothing felt right. We may need to adjust our expectations, I said. Henry leaned back in the passenger seat. That sounds like something a banker says before disappointing you. It sounds like something a responsible adult says. We have been responsible adults for 40 years. And? Perhaps we have earned one irresponsible afternoon. He pointed toward a roadside diner with a sign advertising homemade pie. I laughed. You want pie? I want perspective. You always find perspective near dessert. He turned into the parking lot. The waitress seated us in a booth beside the window. Henry ordered coffee and apple pie. I ordered lemon pie because that was what I had chosen on our first date. He watched me place the order. You remember that? I remember you ate half of mine. You said you were full. I was being polite. You married me anyway. That was before I understood how seriously you took pie. For the first time since I heard Daniel and Melissa in the kitchen, I laughed without forcing it. Henry smiled. Something in his face looked younger. Not because the years had disappeared. Because for a moment, we were no longer parents, grandparents, or temporary guests. We were 2 people sitting in a booth, deciding what kind of life we wanted next. We did this once before, I said. Looked for a home? started with almost nothing. Henry stirred his coffee. We have more than nothing now. We also have less time. He looked at me carefully. That does not mean we should choose less. The waitress brought our pie. Henry waited until she left. What would you choose if you were not worried about being practical? I thought about it. A house with old floors. Why? Because new floors have not heard anyone dancing. He nodded. What else? A porch. A garden? Yes. Blue flowers? You remembered. I remember useful information. I smiled. And a kitchen with enough room for everyone. Henry took one bite of pie. You realize everyone is rarely in the kitchen at the same time. They will be if the kitchen smells like apple cake. He pointed his fork toward me. That is true. The next morning, Anna called. I found something different, she said. How different? It needs work. How much work? She paused. Enough that most buyers will not consider it. Henry was sitting across from me at Daniel's breakfast table. He raised one eyebrow. What kind of house? He asked. Anna gave us the address. Maple Street. The name stirred something in me, though I could not explain why. We met her there an hour later. The house stood near the end of a quiet block lined with mature trees. Its white paint had faded to gray. One shutter hung crooked beside an upstairs window. The porch leaned slightly toward the yard. Vines covered part of the fence. Weeds filled the flower beds. A large maple tree stretched over the roof as if it had been protecting the house for decades. It should have looked tired. Instead, it looked patient. Henry got out of the car slowly. He studied the roofline. Then the chimney. Then the porch posts. That house was built properly, he said. Anna unlocked the front door. The hinges gave a long, low creak. Inside, afternoon sunlight fell through tall windows and spread across worn oak floors. Dust floated through the light. The living room fireplace was covered by an old wooden screen. The wallpaper had faded into pale yellow flowers. Henry walked to the staircase and placed one hand on the railing. Solid oak. The kitchen needed work. 2 cabinet doors were missing. The faucet dripped. A dark water stain marked part of the ceiling. Anna began listing the repairs. Roof. Plumbing. Electrical updates. Porch boards. Heating system. She spoke carefully, as if preparing us to leave. But Henry had already opened the back door. Beyond it was a deep yard bordered by an old fence. There was room for roses. Room for a vegetable garden. Room for grandchildren to run. A weathered wooden bench stood beneath another maple tree. I could picture Henry sitting there with his coffee. I could picture Sunday dinners. I could picture curtains moving in open windows. Not because the house was beautiful. Because it could become beautiful. Henry came to stand beside me. This reminds me of our first apartment. Our first apartment had one good window. And a landlord who played the trumpet. At 2 a.m. He only knew 3 songs. He did not know them well. Henry smiled. Then his expression softened. You saw what that place could become. I looked around the worn kitchen. No. I saw what we could become. Anna joined us on the porch. The owner is eager to sell, she said. The price reflects the condition. When she told us the number, Henry and I exchanged a look. It was lower than we expected. Still, the repairs would require nearly everything we had saved. We walked through the house again. This time, I noticed smaller details. A carved flower on the stair post. Built-in shelves in the pantry. A window seat in the upstairs bedroom. Beneath the staircase, one wooden panel did not quite match the others. I touched it briefly. The wood was cool beneath my fingers. Something about the house felt familiar. Not remembered. Recognized. Outside, Henry studied the porch. We would need an inspection. Yes. A very honest repair estimate. Yes. And patience. We have some of that. He looked at me. You already love it. I do not. You used that tone when we bought the orange sofa. It was rust-colored. It was orange. It lasted 26 years. Henry laughed. Then he turned back toward the house. For 40 years, we had built our lives around other people. Now an old house on Maple Street was offering us one more beginning. I did not know who had lived there. I did not know what had been hidden beneath its stairs. I only knew how it made me feel. Not old. Not unwanted. Not temporary. Home. The inspection took almost 3 hours. By the end, Anna's folder was full of notes. The roof needed replacement sooner than expected. The electrical panel was outdated. 2 pipes beneath the kitchen had been patched more than once. The porch was still strong underneath, but several boards had begun to rot. The furnace worked, but no one could promise how long it would last. The inspector spoke carefully. This house can be restored, he said. But it will take time, money, and patience. Henry looked at me. We have 2 of those. The inspector smiled. I assume money is the missing one. Usually, Henry said. After everyone left, Anna gave us a few minutes alone. The afternoon sun entered through the front windows and stretched across the worn floor. I walked to the fireplace and lifted the old wooden screen. Behind it were handmade tiles in faded shades of blue and cream. One tile showed a small bird sitting on a branch. Henry lowered himself beside me and wiped away the dust with his sleeve. Someone chose every one of these, he said. Someone loved this room. He looked around slowly. Maybe that matters. We sat on the front steps with the repair estimate between us. The asking price was manageable. The urgent repairs were not. We could paint the rooms ourselves. We could delay the upstairs bathroom. Henry could repair parts of the porch once his doctor cleared his knee. But the roof and electrical work could not wait. Even after using most of our savings, we would still be short by nearly $18,000. Henry folded the estimate. We should walk away. His voice was practical. His hand remained on the porch post. I looked across the yard. The fence leaned toward the sidewalk. The flower beds had disappeared beneath weeds. A small red marble rested in a crack near the bottom step. I picked it up and held it in my palm. Do you want to walk away? I asked. Henry did not answer immediately. No. Neither do I. We cannot let a house make us careless. I know. We promised each other we would not spend our later years worrying about every bill. I remember. He looked down at his hands. They were older now. The knuckles larger. The skin thinner. But I could still see the hands that had built our first bookcase from leftover lumber. The hands that assembled Daniel's crib. The hands that repaired broken toys late at night because our son believed his father could fix anything. I could do some of the work, Henry said. Not the roof. No. Not the wiring. No. And not until your doctor clears your knee. He frowned. You are taking the adventure out of this. I have kept you alive for 40 years. I am not stopping now. That made him smile. We drove to the diner near the highway. This time, we did not order pie. Henry spread the inspection report beside the sugar container. I opened my notebook. We worked through every number twice. Purchase price. Closing costs. Property taxes. Insurance. Roof. Electrical work. Emergency repairs. We removed everything that was not necessary. Then we added a small reserve because 40 years of marriage had taught us that something always cost more than expected. The total remained the same. We were still short. We could ask Daniel, Henry said. I looked toward the window. Traffic moved steadily beyond the parking lot. He would help. Yes. And then he would worry. Yes. Melissa would worry, too. Yes. We both understood what worry could become. Questions. Advice. A discussion about whether people our age should be buying an old house. I did not want our new beginning to depend on anyone's approval. That evening, we returned to Daniel's house before dinner. Melissa was helping Lily with a school project at the kitchen table. Daniel was in the garage. Everything looked ordinary. Lily held up a cardboard model of a house. It had a purple roof, 6 windows, and a front door drawn much too large. Who lives there? Henry asked. Everybody, she said. Everybody who? Our whole family. Melissa looked down at the table. I touched Lily's hand. It is a very good house. Later that night, after the hallway became quiet, I took the cedar box from the closet. I placed it on the bed between Henry and me. Inside were old family papers, several photographs, a brass key, and the gold locket my grandmother Evelyn had given me on my wedding morning. The chain was delicate. The metal had softened with age. Inside were 2 tiny photographs. One showed my grandfather Theodore as a young man. The other showed a family standing in front of a house I had never recognized. My grandmother once told me the locket had belonged to her mother. It is not valuable because it is gold, she said. It is valuable because the women in our family kept it when they could keep very little else. I wore it when I married Henry. I wore it when Daniel was born. I wore it at my mother's memorial. Then I placed it in the cedar box because I was afraid of losing it. Henry watched me lift it from the velvet lining. No, he said softly. I have not decided anything. You should not have to sell that. I know. It belongs in the family. So does a home. He looked at me for a long time. We could still call Daniel. I shook my head. We are leaving because we need our independence. I do not want to begin again by borrowing it from him. Henry touched the locket with one finger. Your grandmother called it freedom money. She said every woman should have something she could use if she ever needed to begin again. You are not beginning alone. No. I took his hand. That is why I am not afraid. The next morning, we made an offer on Maple Street. By 4:30, Anna called. The seller had accepted. Henry and I were standing in a grocery store near the canned soup. He lifted both arms as though we had won something. A woman beside us laughed. Good news? We bought a house, Henry said. The woman smiled. Congratulations. Nothing about us looked different. But everything was. 2 days later, the bank gave us the final amount needed at closing. It was slightly higher than expected. I looked at Henry. He looked at the cedar box. Neither of us spoke. The following morning, I placed the gold locket inside a small jewelry case. Henry put on his best jacket. Then we drove together to an antique shop across town. 40 years earlier, wedding gifts had helped us build our first home. Now one wedding memory might help us build our last. And somehow, it did not feel like giving up the past. It felt like asking the past to carry us forward. The bell above the antique shop door gave a soft chime when Henry and I entered. The shop was narrow and warm, with glass cases on both sides and old clocks ticking from the walls. A man in thin glasses looked up from behind the counter. Good morning, he said. I'm Mr. Levin. I placed the small jewelry case in front of him. I'd like to know what this is worth. Henry stood close beside me, though neither of us touched the case. Mr. Levin opened it carefully. The gold locket rested against faded cream velvet. He lifted it beneath a white lamp and examined the chain, the clasp, and the tiny engraving around the edge. "This is older than I expected," he said. He opened the locket. Inside were the two small photographs I had carried for most of my life. My grandfather Theodore on one side. A family standing in front of an unfamiliar house on the other. A woman near the far display case turned toward us. She was tall, with silver hair pulled into a loose knot and a dark green scarf around her neck. "Forgive me," she said. "Are those original photographs?" Mr. Levin glanced at me before answering. I nodded. "Yes." The woman stepped closer, but not too close. She looked at the locket with the careful attention of someone reading a fragile page. "Do you know who they are?" she asked. "The man is my grandfather, Theodore Whitmore. The people in the other photograph are members of his family." "And the house?" "I don't know." She studied the faded porch and the tree near the sidewalk. Then she looked at me. "Keep their names with the locket." Her voice was gentle. "Photographs become lonely when no one remembers who is inside them." Mr. Levin smiled slightly. "Grace, this is Eleanor Price. She taught history for more than 30 years. Public high school," Eleanor said. "Mostly students who believed history began before lunch and ended before the final bell." Henry laughed. Eleanor looked at the jewelry case. "Are you selling it?" The question was kind, but direct. I glanced at Henry. "We are buying a house." "A good house?" "It needs almost everything." Henry added, "That is how she knows it is perfect." Eleanor smiled. "I hope it gives you what you need." Then she moved back toward the display case, leaving us with Mr. Levin. He gave me his first offer. It was less than we needed. Henry leaned closer. "We can still leave." I looked at the locket. My grandmother Evelyn had fastened it around my neck on my wedding morning. Her hands had trembled as she closed the clasp. "Every woman should have something she can call her own," she had told me. Not because she plans to leave. Because freedom should never depend on being invited to stay. At 28, I thought she was speaking about money. At 68, I understood she was speaking about dignity. I asked Mr. Levin whether the photographs could remain inside. Of course. And whether the family names could stay with it. "I will write them into the record." He raised his offer slightly. It was still difficult to hear the number attached to something that had never felt like an object. But it was enough. I signed the receipt. Mr. Levin placed the locket on a square of dark velvet. For one moment, it seemed smaller than I remembered. Henry closed the empty jewelry case and placed it back in my hands. Outside, the morning was bright and cool. I stood on the sidewalk without moving. Henry slipped one arm around my shoulders. "Are you all right?" "Yes." "You do not have to pretend with me." "I am not pretending." I looked through the shop window. Eleanor was speaking with Mr. Levin near the counter. The locket remained between them. "I thought selling it would feel like losing part of the family," I said. "And does it?" "No." I closed my fingers around the empty case. "It feels like using what Grandma wanted me to have." Henry kissed my forehead. "Freedom money. Freedom money." We completed the closing 3 days later. At 11:47 on Thursday morning, Anna placed the keys to Maple Street in my hand. Henry and I drove straight there. We brought no furniture. Only 2 paper cups of coffee and 1 blueberry muffin to share. The front door resisted before opening. Dust moved through the sunlight. The rooms were cold and empty. The kitchen faucet still dripped. Henry took my hand. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, "welcome home." I smiled. "Mr. Whitmore, the roof leaks." "We have owned worse. We rented worse. Then we are improving." That evening, we returned to Daniel's house and found him and Melissa in the kitchen. Lily was coloring at the table. Noah was building a tower on the floor. Daniel looked up. "You two seem happy." We have news, Henry said. Melissa stopped drying a plate. I sat across from them. We bought a house. Daniel stared at me. You what? A house on Maple Street. When? We closed this morning. Melissa lowered herself into a chair. You have been looking? For a few weeks. Daniel looked hurt. Why didn't you tell us? Henry answered calmly. Because we wanted to be certain before it became a family discussion. You didn't need to leave, Daniel said. I know, I replied. Melissa looked down. The memory of the midnight conversation passed across her face. We were going to talk to you. I know. I never wanted you to feel unwelcome. I believe that. I reached across the table and touched her hand. You needed your home back. Henry and I realized we needed one of our own. Daniel asked when we planned to move. Saturday. So soon. Most of our things are already packed. Melissa glanced toward the hallway. Toward the boxes she had labeled. Her eyes filled. I squeezed her hand. No one did anything unforgivable. That mattered. We were not leaving to punish them. We were leaving before resentment could make good people cruel. On Saturday, Daniel rented a small moving truck. Melissa packed sandwiches and coffee. The children carried pillows and light boxes. By sunset, our bed stood upstairs, 2 chairs sat in the living room, and half a lemon pie waited in the refrigerator. When their car finally disappeared down Maple Street, Henry and I remained beneath the porch light. The house behind us was unfinished. Nearly every room needed work. But the key in my hand belonged to us. We had not been pushed into an ending. We had chosen another beginning. Our first morning on Maple Street began with sunlight across the bedroom floor. We had no curtains. Half our clothes were still inside cardboard boxes. The room was cold, and the old furnace made a low knocking sound each time it started. But when I opened my eyes, I knew exactly where I was. Home. Henry was already awake beside me. He stared at the cracked ceiling. What are you thinking? I asked. That we need paint. You have been awake for less than a minute. I had been looking at the ceiling the entire time. I turned toward him. Good morning to you, too. He smiled. Good morning, Mrs. Whitmore. We could not find the coffee maker. Daniel had labeled some boxes. Melissa had labeled the rest. Every box looked useful until we opened it. One held winter scarves. Another held old tax records. A third contained 3 lamps but no light bulbs. Finally, Henry found the metal coffee pot we had used in our first apartment. He held it up like a trophy. I knew we kept this. I tried to throw it away twice. That is why I put it in a box marked important papers. You lied to me. I protected a valuable object. The stove took 3 attempts to light. The coffee came out too strong. We drank it on the front porch from mismatched mugs. The street was quiet. A woman walked a small white dog beneath the maple trees. Somewhere nearby, someone was raking leaves. Henry looked across the yard. The fence leaned in 2 directions. The flower beds had disappeared beneath weeds. What are you studying? I asked. The fence. It is falling down. Only part of it. Most of it. He pointed toward the front corner. I could rebuild that section first. After the roof. Yes. And after your doctor clears your knee. He sighed. You are very strict for a woman drinking coffee made in a museum piece. I looked toward the empty flower beds. What color? For the fence? Yes. Henry pretended to think. Soft white. That was my answer. I remembered. And flowers along the inside. Blue. Delphiniums. They are difficult. You asked. He nodded. Then delphiniums. 40 years earlier, when we bought our first small house, Henry promised me a white fence and blue flowers. Then Daniel was born. Rebecca came 2 years later. There were braces, school trips, tuition, weddings, and grandchildren. The fence never happened. I had forgotten the promise. Henry had not. By noon, we had unpacked the kitchen and bedroom. The living room remained almost empty. Our sofa would not fit through the front door until someone removed a hinge. So we had 2 folding chairs, 1 lamp without a shade, and a rolled rug leaning against the wall. For dinner, we ordered chicken soup, sandwiches, and apple pie from the diner. Henry spread a clean painter's cloth across the living room floor. We sat against the wall and ate from paper containers. The lamp made the room feel warmer than it was. Our first apartment had better plumbing, I said. But worse neighbors. The man upstairs played the trumpet. At 2 in the morning. He only knew 3 songs. He did not know any of them well. I laughed. The sound traveled through the empty house. For one moment, I saw us as we had been 40 years earlier. Henry with thick brown hair and paint on his jeans. Me wearing a yellow sweater I had bought for our honeymoon. We had eaten many dinners on the floor because we could not afford furniture. Back then, we called it romantic because we did not want to call it poor. Now we had more money. More memories. More years behind us than ahead. Yet sitting there with plastic spoons and paper cups felt strangely familiar. Not because we lacked something. Because we were beginning together again. Henry reached across the cloth and took my hand. I missed this, he said. Eating on the floor. Building something that belongs to both of us. I understood. For years, our conversations had been about other people. Daniel's job. Rebecca's move to Colorado. Lily's school. Noah's allergies. Henry's knee. My retirement. We had become very good at caring for everyone else. Somewhere along the way, we stopped asking what the 2 of us still wanted to create. That night, rain began tapping against the windows. At first, it sounded gentle. Then the wind rose. Around 2 in the morning, I heard water dripping in the hallway. Henry. He sat up. What happened? The house has decided to introduce itself. Within 10 minutes, we had placed 2 bowls and a cooking pot beneath 3 leaks. Another drip appeared near the living room window. Henry brought a bucket from the garage. I stood in my robe and slippers, watching rainwater fall into our best stockpot. Then I started laughing. Henry looked at me. What is funny? 40 years ago, we had 1 leaking roof and no money. He moved the bucket a few inches. Now we have 4 leaks and slightly more money. That made me laugh harder. Soon he was laughing, too. We stood beneath a ceiling that needed repair, surrounded by bowls and buckets, laughing like 2 people who had forgotten their age. The next morning, the storm passed. Sunlight returned through the tall windows. The house was still cold. The roof still leaked. Nearly every room still needed work. But something had changed. We were no longer 2 older people who had left our son's home because we felt in the way. We were Grace and Henry again. The young couple who had once built a life from a wooden crate, 1 gallon of paint, and $73. Only now, we had 40 years of experience. And 1 old house ready to begin with us. The roofers came on Monday morning. By 8 o'clock, Maple Street was filled with ladders, trucks, and the steady sound of work above us. Henry stood in the yard with a cup of coffee, watching every movement. You know they have done this before, I told him. I am observing. You are supervising people who did not ask to be supervised. One of the roofers looked down and smiled. He is fine, ma'am. My father does the same thing. Henry lifted his coffee. See? I pointed toward the porch. Observe from farther away. The new roof used more of our budget than we liked. But that evening, rain moved across the neighborhood, and the house remained dry. No bowls. No buckets. No cooking pots beneath the ceiling. Henry sat beside me in the living room and listened to the rain. That is an expensive sound, he said. It sounds like peace. It sounds like $12,000. Do not ruin it. He smiled and closed his eyes. Over the next 2 weeks, the house changed quickly. Not all at once. One corner at a time. Daniel came after work to help remove the front door from its hinges. Melissa brought Lily and Noah with paint samples spread across the kitchen table. There were 12 shades of blue. Ocean air. Quiet harbor. Morning sky. Henry picked up one called First Light. That one, he said. I held it beside the old door. It was nearly the same pale blue we had used on one wall in our first apartment. How did you remember? I asked. I remember everything we could barely afford. We sanded the door together. Henry sat on a low stool because of his knee. Lily worked on the bottom panel with a small sanding block. Noah brushed dust away with an old paintbrush. Daniel repaired the loose hinge. Melissa taped paper around the glass. By late afternoon, the first coat was finished. There were brush marks near the handle. Noah touched one corner before the paint dried. Lily left a tiny blue fingerprint near the bottom. I decided not to cover it. The door did not look perfect. It looked alive. The following weekend, Henry and Daniel rebuilt one short section of the fence. They used the old boards that could still be saved and replaced only what had weakened. Lily painted the new section soft white. Noah carried screws in a small tool belt. He also carried 3 crackers. Henry asked whether the crackers were building supplies. Emergency supplies, Noah said. That is good planning. Melissa and I cleared the flower bed beside the porch. We planted sweet peas near the kitchen steps and 2 young lilac bushes beneath the bedroom window. Henry added peony roots along the fence. You promised me a garden in 1986, I said. I never gave a deadline. That is a dangerous interpretation of marriage. He pressed the soil around the roots. You carried peonies at our wedding. 3 of them. You wanted 20. We could not afford 20. Henry looked toward the row he had planted. Then we will wait for 20. The house slowly gathered pieces of us. A blue door from our first apartment. A white fence from an old promise. Peonies from our wedding. Children's fingerprints in paint. Family voices moving through rooms that had been quiet for years. One evening, after everyone left, Henry found our old radio in a box. The antenna was bent. The tuning dial moved only if he turned it very slowly. You kept that? I asked. You wanted to throw it away. I tried to throw it away. That is why I put it in a box marked tax records. You have been hiding things from me for decades. I have been preserving history. He plugged it in. Static filled the living room. Then came an old song we had danced to when we were newly married. Henry held out his hand. No, I said. I have not asked anything. You are about to. The floor is covered in dust. So are we. My hair is tied back with a paint rag. You look beautiful. That line worked better 40 years ago. It still worked. I placed my hand in his. We moved slowly because of his knee. Paint cans stood near the fireplace. A ladder leaned against the wall. The room had no curtains and only one lamp. But when Henry held me close, I was 28 again. We were in a small apartment with one blue wall and a kitchen table made from a wooden crate. We did not know how we would pay every bill. We did not know whether we would be good parents. We did not know how quickly 40 years could pass. But we knew how to begin. Henry rested his cheek against my hair. We should have done this sooner, he said. Bought a house with bad plumbing? Started something that belonged only to us. The song ended. He did not release my hand. The next morning, we began removing the faded wallpaper near the staircase. Most of it came away in long strips. Near the bottom step, my scraper slipped behind a wooden panel. The panel moved. Only slightly. I pressed it again. A hollow sound came from behind it. Henry crouched beside me. "These boards were added later," he said. He ran one finger along a narrow seam hidden beneath layers of paint. Near the baseboard was a small round opening. Too narrow for a modern key. My breath caught. I went upstairs and opened the cedar box. The empty place where the gold locket had rested was still visible in the velvet. Beside it lay the old brass key my grandmother Evelyn had given me years ago. She had never told me what it opened. Only that it belonged to something our family had lost. I carried it downstairs. Henry looked at the key in my hand. "Do you think it fits?" "I do not know." I lowered myself beside him. The brass felt cold between my fingers. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then I brought the key toward the opening. Whatever was hidden behind that panel had waited for decades. And now the house was ready to tell us why we had found it. The brass key fit on the second try. At first, it stopped halfway. I adjusted the angle and pushed gently. This time, it slid into the narrow opening beneath the staircase. Henry looked at me. Neither of us spoke. I turned the key. A small metal click sounded behind the wood. Then the panel moved toward us by less than an inch. Henry placed his fingers along the edge and pulled carefully. The entire section opened like a narrow door. Cold, dry air drifted from the darkness behind it. The space was larger than we expected. Not a full room. More like a storage closet built beneath the stairs. The ceiling sloped sharply. Old shelves lined one wall. A folded quilt rested on the highest shelf. Below it were two glass jars, a rusted lantern, and a large cedar box covered in dust. Henry lifted a work light. "Someone sealed this carefully." "Why?" "I do not know." He tested the floorboards with the end of a broom handle before stepping inside. I followed him. The cedar box had a small metal lock, but it was already broken. Henry lifted the lid. The smell of old paper and dry wood filled the space. Inside were bundles of letters tied with faded blue ribbon. Several black and white photographs rested inside a cloth envelope. There were tax receipts, newspaper clippings, and property records protected between pieces of cardboard. On top of everything lay a child's drawing of a house. The roof was red. The front door was blue. A large tree stood near the sidewalk. I stared at the drawing. "What is it?" Henry asked. "The door." "What about it?" "It looks like ours." Henry held the light closer. "Children like blue." "Yes." But the porch had 4 square posts. The upstairs window had a curved frame. The tree leaned toward the roof in the same way our maple tree did. I opened the cloth envelope. The first photograph showed several children sitting on the front steps. The second showed a woman standing in the garden with a basket on her hip. The third showed a young couple beside the maple tree. The man wore a dark suit. The woman held a baby wrapped in a white blanket. I brought the picture closer to the light. The man's face was older than the one I remembered. But the eyes were the same. The jaw was the same. The small scar above his right eyebrow was still visible. "Henry." He leaned beside me. "That is my grandfather." "Theodore?" I nodded. My voice came out quietly. "Theodore Whitmore." For several seconds, only the hum of the work light filled the space. Henry took the photograph carefully. He looked at Theodore's face. Then at the staircase above us. "Are you sure?" I grew up with his photograph on Grandma Evelyn's dresser. I opened another picture. This one showed the entire family standing in front of the house. 6 adults. 4 children. A wooden bench beneath the maple tree. The same bench that now stood in our backyard. Its paint was gone. Some boards had been replaced. But the shape was unmistakable. I sat back on my heels. "The photograph inside the locket," I said. Henry understood immediately. "This is the same house." "Yes." The realization moved through me slowly. The porch. The tall windows. The carved flower on the stair post. The maple tree. The faded photograph I had carried for 40 years. I had seen every detail separately. I had never understood they belonged together. Henry reached into the cedar box and lifted one bundle of letters. Written across the first envelope were the words, "For Evelyn, when she is old enough to understand." My grandmother's name. I touched the writing. She never saw this. Maybe she never knew it was here. Then how did she have the key? Henry looked toward the open panel. Someone must have passed it to her. I remembered the day Evelyn placed the brass key in my hand. She had told me it belonged to something our family lost. I thought she meant an object. A trunk. A desk. Maybe an old cabinet. I had never imagined she meant a home. Henry untied the ribbon. Inside were letters signed Theodore and Margaret. One envelope had never been opened. Another carried a postmark from 1961. Beneath them, the cardboard folder held property tax records, an insurance policy, and an old deed. The paper had yellowed, but the typed words were clear. I read the address first. Maple Street. Our address. Then I read the owner's name. Theodore James Whitmore. My grandfather. I lowered myself onto the floor. Henry sat beside me despite his knee. Neither of us knew what to say. We had not searched for this house. We had not known it belonged to anyone in my family. We chose it because of the sunlight. Because of the oak railing. Because there was space for flowers. Because it made us feel young enough to begin again. Yet hidden beneath the staircase was proof that a Whitmore had begun here long before us. Henry took my hand. "You did not just buy an old house." "No." I looked at Theodore's name on the deed. "I think we bought back something my family never meant to lose." Outside, the evening wind moved through the maple branches. The house creaked softly around us. Not like an empty place. Like a place remembering. I lifted the unopened letter addressed to Evelyn. Whatever had happened on Maple Street had waited beneath these stairs for decades. Now someone in the family was finally here to read it. The letter addressed to Evelyn had never been opened. My grandmother had been gone for more than 20 years, but seeing her name written in Theodore's hand made her feel close enough to answer from the next room. Henry moved the work light nearer. "Do you want me to open it?" he asked. I shook my head. "No. I think this belongs to me." The envelope was fragile. I slipped a letter opener beneath the flap and moved slowly. Inside were 4 pages covered in blue ink. The first line stopped me. "My dear Evelyn, if this letter ever reaches you, I hope you are old enough to understand why we left Maple Street." I read the words aloud. Theodore had written the letter in 1961. He explained that the Whitmore family had lived in the house for nearly 30 years. His father helped build the porch. His mother planted lilacs beneath the bedroom window. The front door had been painted blue because Evelyn, still a little girl, believed every house should look like the sky. I looked toward the hallway. Our own blue door stood beyond the dining room. Henry had chosen that color because it reminded him of our first apartment. Neither of us had known. I continued reading. Theodore worked at a railroad repair yard. Margaret took in sewing. They paid the mortgage, taxes, and insurance carefully. Then Theodore injured his back and missed several months of work. The family fell behind. Fees were added. Their lender refused to adjust the payment schedule. At that time, black families were often denied the same fair terms and financial options offered to others. Theodore returned to work, but the debt had already grown beyond what they could manage. The house was sold. The Whitmores were given less than 30 days to leave. Theodore packed photographs, letters, and property records inside the hidden space beneath the stairs. He believed he would return for them. But the locks were changed. The family moved twice within a year. The key passed from one relative to another. Eventually, it reached Evelyn. But no one remembered the exact address. Or perhaps no one wanted to remember it. Shame had done what time could not. It made the family stop asking questions. I lowered the letter. Henry held the old deed in his hands. Theodore believed he had failed them, he said. Yes. But he did not. No. He worked. He tried. I know. For years, I had wondered why Grandma Evelyn never spoke about owning a home. She rented the same small duplex for almost 40 years. She kept it spotless. She ironed pillowcases. She polished the kitchen floor every Saturday. When I once asked why she never bought a larger place, she told me, "A home does not have to belong to you for you to care for it." I had thought she was teaching me gratitude. Now I wondered whether she was teaching herself how not to want what her family had lost. Henry opened another letter. It was from Margaret to her sister. She wrote about ordinary things. A broken stove. Sunday dinners. Children running through the yard. The upstairs toilet making terrible noises in winter. Henry looked at me. The freight train. The same one. Despite everything, I laughed. Margaret wrote about planting peonies along the fence. She described Theodore building a wooden bench beneath the maple tree. She said they sometimes danced in the living room when the radio played their song. My eyes moved toward the room where Henry and I had danced through dust and paint cans. We thought we were repeating our own past. We had also been repeating theirs. Not because we knew. Because some kinds of love leave patterns behind. At the bottom of the cedar box, we found a handwritten inventory of the things the family carried away. Clothes. Tools. Blankets. A sewing machine. Near the bottom, one line had been underlined. Gold family locket with photographs. Given to Evelyn before departure. My hand moved to my throat. The locket had come from this house. It was the one piece of Maple Street Evelyn had carried through the rest of her life. She gave it to me on my wedding morning. And I had sold it to buy the house back. The meaning of that settled over me slowly. Henry understood before I spoke. Grace. I used the locket to complete the closing. You did not know. No. He took my hand. Maybe that is exactly what it was meant to do. I looked at Theodore's photograph. The house was lost, but the locket stayed with the family. And then it brought you back. I did not believe objects could make choices. But I believed choices could travel through generations. Evelyn kept the locket. I kept saving. Henry and I chose independence instead of resentment. One decision led to another until we found ourselves beneath the staircase of a house my family had lost before I was born. We carried the letters into the dining room and placed them across the oak table. Beside Theodore's old deed, I set our new closing papers. The same address. The same family name. More than 60 years apart. Henry sat across from me. What do we do now? I looked around the unfinished room. The wallpaper was only half removed. Boxes remained near the wall. The house still needed weeks of work. But it no longer felt like a renovation project. It felt like a responsibility. We preserve the letters, I said. The photographs? Everything. That may change some of our plans. I know. It may take longer. I know. And cost more. I gave him a look. He smiled. I had to mention it. Then he became serious. Do we tell Daniel and Melissa? Yes. I thought about Lily's cardboard house. The one with room for everyone. Our children should know where they came from. The next morning, I called Daniel. We found something beneath the stairs, I said. His voice became concerned. Is something wrong? No. I looked at Theodore's photograph beside our deed. Something is finally right. What did you find? Come Saturday. Bring Melissa and the children. Mom, what is this about? I looked through the window at the blue front door. It is about why this house felt like home before we even knew its name. Saturday arrived bright and cool. Henry placed the photographs along the dining room table. I arranged the letters beside them. Theodore's deed rested in the center. Next to it, I placed our closing papers. 2 sets of documents. 2 Whitmore names. The same address. Henry adjusted the work light near the hidden door for the 3rd time. They can see without it, I said. I want them to see clearly. They will. At 10:15, a car door closed outside. Lily reached the porch first. Noah followed her carrying a paper bag. Daniel and Melissa came behind them. Melissa held a bouquet of white and pale pink flowers. I did not know what kind you wanted, she said. They are beautiful. She noticed the young peonies beside the fence. Henry planted those? For our anniversary. That was 40 years ago. Henry shrugged. I remember useful information. Daniel carried a cardboard box into the dining room. Inside were archival sleeves, folders, and acid-free paper. You bought supplies before you knew what we found? I asked. You said it was under an old staircase, he replied. I assumed paper was involved. Lily saw the photograph of Evelyn standing beside the blue front door. Grandma, is that you? No. That is my grandmother. She looks like you. Noah pointed at the house behind her. That looks like this house. The room became quiet. I placed my hand on Theodore's deed. It is this house. Daniel stopped opening the box. Melissa looked from the photograph to the hallway. You knew before you bought it? No. Henry opened the hidden panel. We found everything in there. The children entered first. Their voices became softer inside the narrow space. They examined the lantern, the child's drawing, and the old shelves. When they came out, I read Theodore's letter aloud. I told them about the railroad yard. About Margaret's sewing. About the payments the family tried to make. About the house being sold. About the documents hidden beneath the stairs because Theodore believed he would return. I did not add anger to the story. The facts were enough. Daniel sat at the end of the table with his hands clasped together. Melissa stood near the fireplace holding one of Margaret's letters. When I reached the line about Evelyn choosing the blue front door, Lily looked toward the hallway. Grandma chose blue, too. I did. Did you remember? No. Lily considered that. Maybe the house remembered. No one corrected her. I passed Theodore's photograph to Daniel. He studied it for a long time. Then he looked at me. I should have spoken to you sooner. The words came without warning. Melissa lowered the letter. Daniel continued. When you were staying with us, Melissa kept asking when we would make a plan. He glanced toward his wife. She was not asking me to throw you out. She was asking me to talk honestly. Melissa nodded. I needed my office back. The kids needed more space. But I did not know how to say that without sounding selfish. Daniel looked down. So I kept delaying it. You told yourself you were protecting us, I said. Yes. But we already knew something had changed. I know. His voice became quieter. By saying nothing, I made you feel as though your place in our house could disappear without anyone having the courage to tell you. Henry pulled out the chair beside him. Daniel sat down. His father placed one hand on his shoulder. He did not say everything was fine. It was not. But he did not make Daniel beg for forgiveness, either. Melissa came to the table. I moved your coats into the garage, she said. Yes. I measured the guest room. Yes. I left that senior living brochure beside your coffee. Her eyes dropped. I told myself I was helping everyone prepare. But you were sending a message. Yes. She looked at me. I wanted my house back. But I did not want you to feel as though you no longer had a place in the family. You did not understand that one could cause the other. No. I touched the letter in front of her. Understanding is not the end of something. What is it? The beginning of doing better. Melissa nodded. Then she looked toward the photographs. Tell me what Margaret planted. I found the letter describing the garden. Peonies near the fence. Lilacs beneath the bedroom window. Sweet peas beside the kitchen steps. Melissa opened Daniel's box and found a clean sheet of paper. She wrote everything down. We can restore part of it. Henry looked toward the yard. Some plants may not grow in the same places now. Then we keep the idea, Melissa said. Even if the details change. I smiled. That is usually how families survive. Daniel picked up the photograph of the old white fence. The posts were wider than the ones outside now. Henry studied it. The original was replaced years ago. We could rebuild one section. Henry looked at him. We? Daniel met his father's eyes. Yes. We. Lily raised both hands. I can paint. Noah copied her. I can hammer. With the rubber mallet, Daniel said. Noah frowned. That is not a real hammer. It is real enough for now. The tension softened. For the rest of the afternoon, we preserved the documents. Daniel scanned each page. Melissa wrote names and dates on separate labels. The children matched photographs to rooms in the house. Lily stood beside the blue door in the same position Evelyn had stood more than 60 years earlier. I took a picture. 2 girls from the same family. The same doorway behind them. Before they left, Daniel stopped near the porch. Dad, I can come tomorrow. You do not have to. I know. What are you bringing? My saw. Henry nodded. The good one? The good one. Melissa placed the flowers in a glass pitcher on the oak table. Then she turned to me. What should I bring? I looked at the unfinished kitchen. Yourself. She smiled. I can do that. After their car disappeared down Maple Street, Henry stood beside me in the doorway. The house was quiet again. But it no longer felt empty. The children's fingerprints marked the glass. Melissa's flowers stood beside Theodore's deed. Daniel's tools would return in the morning. The house had brought our history back. Now it was giving our family a place to repair what silence had damaged. And for the first time since we left Daniel's guest room, I believed they were not coming because they felt guilty. They were coming because they wanted to belong here, too. Over the next 2 weekends, Maple Street changed without ever feeling rushed. Daniel worked beside Henry on the porch and fence. Melissa helped me clean the kitchen and preserve the family letters. Lily painted one section of the fence soft white. Noah carried screws in a small tool belt, along with 2 crackers he called emergency supplies. We did not repair every room. We repaired only what mattered first. The blue front door opened smoothly. The dining room walls became warm cream. One section of the old fence stood straight again. The house still had worn floors, unfinished trim, and a bathroom that made strange noises in cold weather. But it was beginning to feel lived in. More importantly, it felt shared. Our 40th anniversary was 10 days away. Henry and I had planned a quiet dinner. Melissa had other ideas. We are using the dining room, she announced one Saturday morning. We only have 6 chairs, I said. We will borrow more. The curtains are not finished. They will be. The kitchen still has one missing cabinet door. No one is coming to inspect the cabinets. Henry looked at me. She has an answer for everything. Melissa opened a notebook. I have a list. That explains it, Daniel said. She began writing down names. Rebecca and her husband. The children. Anna, our real estate agent. 2 neighbors who had helped clear branches after the storm. Melissa was not trying to control the house. She was trying to fill it. That difference mattered. While Daniel and Henry worked outside, Melissa and I unpacked the last boxes in the dining room. We found old recipe cards, framed photographs, and the cedar box I had carried from Daniel's guest room. Melissa placed it on the oak table. What is inside? Family papers. She opened the lid carefully. The brass key was no longer there. It rested on a hook near the hidden door. The gold locket was gone, too. Only the empty place in the velvet remained. Melissa noticed it immediately. What was here? I hesitated. The locket I wore in our wedding photograph. She looked toward the framed picture on the mantel. In it, I stood beside Henry outside a small church. The locket rested against my dress. You sold it, she said. It was not a question. Yes. To buy this house? We were short at closing. Melissa sat down. You never told us. It was our decision. You could have asked Daniel. I know. She looked at the empty space again. Then she began searching beneath the papers. At the bottom of the box, she found the receipt from Mr. Levin's antique shop. She read the description aloud. Edwardian gold family locket. 2 photographs inside. Her expression changed. That is the shop where we met Eleanor. Yes. The retired history teacher. Yes. Melissa turned the receipt over. Did she buy it? I do not know. Did you ever call? No. Why not? Because it was no longer mine. Melissa looked at me for a long moment. Then she closed the box. When does the shop open on Monday? 10, I think. She stood and walked toward the porch. Daniel was helping Henry measure a fence board. Melissa held up the receipt. We are going there Monday. Daniel looked confused. What happened? Your mother sold the locket. He lowered the measuring tape. What locket? The one from the wedding photograph. The one that belonged to Evelyn. Daniel came inside and read the receipt. Mom, why didn't you call me? I kept my voice calm. We left your house because we needed to become independent again. We did not want to begin by borrowing money from you. Daniel looked hurt. But before he could answer, Melissa spoke. She sold it because depending on us no longer felt safe. The room became quiet. She did not blame Daniel alone. She included herself in the truth. Daniel sat beside her. What do we do? We find out whether it's sold. And if it did? We find the buyer. The shop may not give us private information. Then they can contact the buyer for us. Daniel looked at me. Do you want it back? I thought about the locket. About Evelyn fastening it around my neck. About the photographs inside. About the handwritten inventory beneath the stairs. Gold family locket. Given to Evelyn before departure. Yes, I said. But not at any cost. Melissa nodded. We will be respectful. Henry raised one eyebrow. That is not the same as saying you will be reasonable. Melissa almost smiled. I will try to be both. On Monday morning, Daniel and Melissa went to Levin Antiques. Mr. Levin remembered them. He also remembered the locket. It had sold 12 days earlier. The buyer was Eleanor Price. Melissa called me from the sidewalk outside the shop. Mr. Levin cannot give us her address. He should not. But he agreed to contact her. That is enough. No, Melissa said. It is a beginning. Mr. Levin left Eleanor a message. Then another. For 2 days, she did not respond. Melissa wrote a letter and asked him to forward it. She told Eleanor about Maple Street. About Theodore. About the hidden room. About the locket leaving the house with Evelyn. And about me selling it without knowing I was using one piece of the family's history to buy back another. At the end, Melissa wrote. We understand that you purchased it fairly. We will respect your decision. But if you are willing, we would like the chance to bring it home. On Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. Melissa was on the line. Her voice was careful. She called. Eleanor? Yes. What did she say? Melissa took a breath. She wants to meet us. When? Saturday. I looked toward the blue front door. The locket had left the family once. Now the woman holding it wanted to hear why we believed it still belonged here. Saturday morning, Melissa and Daniel left before 8. Eleanor Price lived outside Providence, nearly 90 miles from Maple Street. Henry offered to drive with them. Melissa shook her head. This is something Daniel and I need to do. I understood. The locket had left our family because Henry and I chose independence. But Melissa believed her actions had helped make that choice necessary. Finding it was not simply an errand for her. It was an apology she wanted to complete with her own hands. Before leaving, Daniel stood near the blue front door. We may come back without it. I know. You will be all right? I sold it willingly. Melissa looked at me. But you would still like it home. Yes. She nodded once. Then we are going to tell Eleanor why. After they drove away, Henry and I worked quietly in the dining room. We placed more of Theodore's letters into protective sleeves. Neither of us said much about the locket. But every time a car slowed outside, we both looked toward the window. Melissa told me the full story later. Eleanor's home was a small gray colonial with dark green shutters. Books filled nearly every wall. Old photographs stood on shelves beside handwritten cards identifying the people inside them. A repaired pocket watch rested beneath a glass cover. An embroidered handkerchief was framed near the staircase. Even an old lunch pail had a small card beside it. Eleanor served tea in a bright room overlooking her garden. The locket rested inside its velvet case on the table. I remember you from Mr. Levin's shop, Eleanor told Melissa. You were not there to buy anything. No, Melissa said. But I should have paid more attention. Eleanor opened the locket. She looked at Theodore's photograph, then at the family standing before the Maple Street house. I bought this because no names were displayed with it, she explained. The faces looked as if they were waiting for someone to recognize them. Daniel showed her the copy of Theodore's deed. Melissa showed her the photograph of Evelyn beside the blue door. Then they told her everything. They explained how Henry and I had lived with them after selling our home. How a conversation had been avoided. How small actions made us understand that our place there was temporary. How we quietly searched for another home. How we sold the locket to cover the final cost. Eleanor listened without interrupting. Then she asked one question. Why did Grace sell something that mattered so much instead of asking her son for help? Daniel looked down. Melissa answered. Because depending on us no longer felt safe. The room became quiet. Daniel later told me that Melissa did not soften the truth. She did not blame him alone. She described the storage boxes. The measuring tape. The senior living brochure. The conversation I had overheard. Then she said, Grace never punished us. She simply chose dignity. I cannot undo how I made her feel, but I want to repair what I can. Eleanor closed the locket gently. I taught history for 32 years, she said. Most students believed history was made only by presidents, generals, and famous people. She pointed toward the old lunch pail on the shelf. One student brought that to my classroom. His grandfather carried it into a factory for 41 years. It had dents, rust, and his name scratched underneath. She smiled. That boy understood his grandfather differently after holding it. Eleanor looked at the locket again. History is often a recipe card. A house key. A photograph. Something ordinary that survived because one person refused to throw it away. Daniel asked whether she would consider selling it. Eleanor did not answer immediately. She lifted the photograph of Theodore's family and compared it with Evelyn standing before the blue door. Then she said, "I purchased jewelry. You came looking for family." She agreed to return the locket for exactly what she had paid. Melissa offered more. Eleanor refused. "I do not want a profit from someone else's homecoming." She asked for only one thing. "When the house is finished, send me a photograph of the family standing beneath that blue door." Melissa promised. "And write every name on the back," Eleanor added. "No one inside this story should become anonymous again." On the drive home, Melissa held the velvet case in her lap. The chain was still delicate, and the clasp had weakened. Instead of coming directly to Maple Street, she and Daniel stopped at a jeweler. They asked for a careful repair before our anniversary. When they arrived that evening, Melissa carried only her purse. Daniel brought a bakery box. Henry opened it. "Where are the pastries?" "We ate them," Daniel said. "All of them?" It was a long drive. I looked at Melissa. "Well?" She placed her purse on the dining table. "Eleanor is a remarkable woman." Did she understand? "Yes." "And the locket?" Melissa exchanged a glance with Daniel. "She believes it belongs with the Whitmores." That was all she said. I noticed the relief in her face. I also noticed the way she kept one hand near her purse. But I did not ask another question. Our anniversary was 2 days away. For once, I allowed my children to keep a secret. Later that night, I saw Melissa measuring a small velvet box beside the wrapping paper. When she noticed me, she covered it with a napkin. I pretended not to see. The house had already returned our history. Now, somewhere inside it, the final piece was waiting to return to me. On the morning of our 40th anniversary, Henry was outside before breakfast. I found him beneath the bedroom window, studying the lilac bushes. "You are wearing your good shirt," I said. "Melissa gave me instructions. That explains why it is buttoned correctly." He smiled and clipped one small blossom. "For the bride." I lifted it to my face. The scent was soft. Behind him, the white fence followed the edge of the yard. The blue front door stood open to the morning light. The house was not finished. One upstairs room still needed paint. The pantry shelves leaned slightly. The bathroom continued making strange noises in cold weather. But it was ours. And it was alive. By noon, cars began filling Maple Street. Rebecca arrived from Colorado with her husband. Anna, our real estate agent, brought a framed copy of the original listing. 2 neighbors carried folding chairs and food. Daniel brought ice. Henry looked at the bag. "You remembered." Daniel nodded. "I was told that was your only responsibility. I also provide emotional support. You moved the lemonade 3 times. The light was wrong." Melissa moved through the dining room with a notebook in one hand. She counted chairs, adjusted flowers, and checked the cake twice. Months earlier, she had moved our belongings into labeled boxes because she needed space in her home. Now she was making certain every person had a place in ours. That difference mattered. At 4 o'clock, Lily took my hand. "Grandma, you and Grandpa have to come downstairs together." Henry offered me his arm. We walked into the dining room. The oak table stretched through the center with borrowed chairs around it. Cream-colored candles stood between peonies and lilacs. Theodore and Margaret's photograph rested on the mantel. Beside it was the picture of Evelyn as a little girl in front of the blue door. Daniel raised his glass. 40 years ago, Mom and Dad began with $73. And an orange sofa, Rebecca added. It was rust-colored, Henry said. Everyone laughed. Daniel waited. Then his voice became quieter. You built a home for us. You made room for our mistakes, our noise, our friends, and our children. He looked at me. When you stayed with Melissa and me, I avoided an honest conversation because I wanted everyone to be comfortable. Melissa reached for his hand. Instead, silence made you feel temporary. He looked around the room. You left without anger. You began again. And somehow, while rebuilding your own home, you gave all of us another place to belong. He raised his glass. To 40 years. The glasses touched. A soft, clear sound moved through the room. At the beginning of our story, breaking glass had led me into a dark hallway, where I learned that our time in someone else's home was ending. Now the gentle sound of glasses meeting filled a room restored by the same family who once struggled to speak honestly. After dinner, Melissa placed a small wrapped box in front of me. Daniel stood beside her. This is from both of us, she said. But finding it was mostly Melissa. She refused to give up, Daniel added. Melissa looked at him. Some things should not be left unfinished. I removed the paper slowly. Inside was a velvet jewelry case. My hands knew before my mind allowed me to believe it. I opened the lid. The gold locket rested inside. The chain had been repaired. The clasp shone. Theodore's photograph remained on one side. His family stood before the Maple Street house on the other. For a moment, I could not speak. Melissa knelt beside my chair. We met Eleanor Price. You drove to Rhode Island. She listened to the whole story. And she agreed? She said she bought jewelry, but we came looking for family. Daniel smiled. She returned it for exactly what she paid. Melissa took my hand. I cannot change how I made you feel in our house. But I could help bring back the one thing you should never have needed to lose. There was no excuse in her face. Only honesty. You worked very hard to find it, I said. I needed to. Henry lifted the locket. May I? I turned my back to him. His fingers were slower than they had been 40 years earlier, but they were steady. The clasp closed behind my neck. The locket rested over my heart. I remembered Evelyn fastening it there on my wedding morning. Freedom should never depend on being invited to stay. At 28, I heard those words as advice. At 68, I understood them as inheritance. Before everyone left, we gathered outside beneath the blue door. Henry stood beside me. Daniel and Melissa stood behind the children. Rebecca held Theodore's photograph. Anna took the picture. The next morning, Melissa wrote every name on the back. Then she mailed a copy to Eleanor Price. A week later, Eleanor sent a note. The people inside the locket no longer look lost. Sunday visits became a family habit after that. Daniel and Henry finished the fence. Lily learned to make Evelyn's apple cake. Noah graduated from the rubber mallet to a small real hammer, used only under close supervision. Melissa planted sweet peas beside the kitchen steps. Henry's peonies finally bloomed the following spring. There were more than 20. He cut 3 and placed them beside my breakfast plate. Why only 3? I asked. That is how the story began. Through the window, I saw our family coming up the walk. The blue door opened before they reached it. I once believed a home was built only once. I was wrong. A home is built every time someone tells the truth kindly. Every time an apology becomes an action. Every time a door opens without making anyone wonder how long they are allowed to remain. Now I would like to hear from you. Do you think Grace and Henry were right to leave quietly, or should they have confronted Daniel and Melissa first? And did Melissa earn forgiveness through what she did afterward? To comment, scroll below the video, tap add a comment, type one sentence, then tap post. Tap the thumbs up button if this story touched you, and tap subscribe below the video to join us for the next family story. If you see a small bell, tap it and choose all. Tap share if someone you love may need to hear this story.